Sophia sat at her desk, reviewing the latest marketing reports while the hum of office chatter filled the space around her. The glow of her computer screen reflected off her tired eyes, but exhaustion was a small price to pay for her recent promotion. She had worked for years to climb the corporate ladder, putting in extra hours, taking on difficult projects, and proving that she was more than capable. Her phone buzzed with a new email. She clicked it open, her heart skipping a beat when she saw the sender's name, Ethan Carter, CEO. Sophia, I would like to discuss a special project with you. Join me in my office at 6 p.m. today. Looking forward to it. She swallowed hard, reading the words twice. Ethan had always been professional with her, but in the past few months she had noticed subtle shifts in his behaviour. Small things, a lingering glance during meetings, unnecessary late-night emails, compliments that felt just a little too personal. Still, she could not afford to second-guess a direct request from the CEO. At exactly 6 p.m, she knocked on his office door. "Come in," Ethan's voice called from inside. She stepped in, her pulse quickening. The dim lighting of the room made it feel more intimate than usual. Ethan sat behind his desk, his suit jacket draped over the chair, his tie slightly loosened. He looked up, flashing his usual charismatic smile. "Ah, Sophia, right on time. Have a seat." She settled into the chair across from him, keeping her posture straight. "I will get straight to the point," Ethan began, tapping his fingers on the desk. "You have shown incredible dedication to this company, and I see great potential in you. That is why I want you to be directly involved in our upcoming expansion project." Sophia's eyes widened. "That is a huge opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Carter." He chuckled. "Ethan, no need for formalities when we are discussing your future." She nodded, though the way he leaned forward, watching her closely, made her uneasy. "This project is critical, and I want to ensure we get it right. That is why I think it would be best if we discuss the finer details in a more private setting," he continued, his gaze locked on hers. She hesitated. "A private setting?" He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Yes, a business dinner at my house. No distractions, just work. I find these conversations flow much better outside the office." Sophia forced a polite smile. "I appreciate the offer, but I would not want to impose." Ethan waved a hand dismissively. "Nonsense, I insist. Consider it a mentoring session. This could shape your future at the company." A moment of silence stretched between them. She knew saying no was not an option. If she refused, it could cost her everything she had worked for. "All right," she said finally. "Tomorrow evening." Ethan's smile widened. "Perfect. I will send you the address." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Thank you for this opportunity." As she turned to leave, she felt his eyes on her. A shiver ran down her spine. "Looking forward to it, Sophia," he said softly. She walked out of the office, her heart pounding. Something about this felt wrong, but she pushed the doubt aside. It was just business, wasn't it? Sophia pulled up in front of Ethan's house, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly as she took a deep breath. The house was larger than she expected, a sleek, modern design with floor-to-ceiling windows and a driveway that could fit 10 cars. It sat on the edge of the city, far enough from the noise, but isolated enough to make her uneasy. She checked her phone for the time, 7:58 p.m. She stepped out of the car, smoothing down her dress as she approached the front door. Before she could ring the bell, the door swung open. Ethan stood there, smiling. "Sophia, right on time. I like that." She returned the smile politely. "I did not want to be late." "Punctuality is a sign of discipline," he said, stepping aside. "Come in." She hesitated before stepping inside. The interior was just as grand as she imagined. Dark leather furniture, a chandelier that dripped from the ceiling, and a fireplace flickering in the corner. The lights were dim, casting shadows along the walls. He closed the door behind her, turning the lock with a quiet click. Her stomach twisted. She told herself it was nothing, that she was overthinking. People locked their doors all the time. "Make yourself comfortable," Ethan said, gesturing toward the living room. She walked forward, taking in her surroundings. There was no sign of a dining setup or a workspace. No files, no laptops. A business discussion should have looked different. He moved toward a sleek black bar near the window, picking up a crystal bottle of whiskey. "Drink?" "I do not usually drink at work meetings," she said, forcing a small laugh. He smirked. "Sophia, this is not a work meeting. This is two professionals having an open conversation." She hesitated before nodding. "Just a little." He poured the golden liquid into a glass and handed it to her. The scent was strong, burning the back of her throat before she even took a sip. He sat down across from her, his gaze steady. "So tell me, how do you like working for me?" She took a careful sip before answering. "I am grateful for the opportunities I have had here. The projects have been challenging, but I have learned a lot." "You are smart," Ethan said, swirling the whiskey in his glass. "And hard-working. That is why I want you on this project. I do not trust many people, but I trust you." She shifted slightly. "Thank you. That means a lot." He leaned forward, resting his elbow on his knee. "Do you know how rare it is to find someone like you? Someone who is not just competent, but special?" She forced another smile. "That is kind of you to say." His eyes flickered over her face, down to her hands, then back up. "I have seen so many people in this company come and go, but you are different. You remind me of someone I once knew." She swallowed hard. "Oh? My ex-wife," his voice lowered. "She was ambitious like you, driven, beautiful." Sophia's grip tightened around the glass. "That is a compliment, I suppose," he chuckled. "It is." He took another sip, watching her. "She never understood me, though. She never saw what I needed." Sophia's mouth felt dry. "I am sorry to hear that." Ethan leaned back, stretching his arms along the couch. "But I think you understand me, don't you?" Her pulse quickened. "I am not sure I do." He tilted his head. "Sophia, you are an intelligent woman. You know exactly what I mean." She shifted in her seat. "Ethan, I appreciate your support, but I want to make sure we are clear about this project. What exactly do you need from me?" His smirk deepened. "Commitment." She forced a polite laugh. "Well, of course, I am fully committed to my work." His eyes darkened slightly. "That is not what I meant." A lump formed in her throat. She placed the glass on the table. "Maybe I should go. I have an early start tomorrow." He reached out, fingers lightly brushing against her wrist. "Don't rush." Her breath hitched. "Ethan." He held her gaze. "Sophia, you do not have to pretend. I know you feel it too." She jerked her hand away, standing quickly. "I think I have misinterpreted something here." His expression shifted, the warmth in his smile fading. "Sit down." Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. "I should go." He stood, his presence suddenly overwhelming. "I invited you here for a reason. You knew that when you accepted." She took a step back. "I thought this was about business." His eyes narrowed. "It is. Business, relationships, loyalty, they are all connected." Her breath came in short, shallow bursts. "I am loyal to my work." He exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "That is not enough." She turned toward the door, but before she could reach it, his hand caught her arm. She stiffened. "Let go." His grip tightened. "Sophia, we are adults. We can talk." She yanked her arm back. "I said let go." He studied her for a moment, then sighed. "You are making a mistake." She backed away, her hands trembling. No, Ethan, you are. Without another word, she rushed to the door, twisting the lock with fumbling fingers. The cool night air hit her face as she stumbled outside. She did not look back. She did not stop running until she reached her car, slamming the door shut and locking it. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as she tried to steady herself. She had ignored the warning signs. She had convinced herself it was just business. But it was never just business. Sophia shifted slightly, crossing her legs as she placed her glass on the table. The air in the room felt thick, the dim lighting casting long shadows against the walls. Ethan leaned in closer, his elbow resting on the couch beside her, his gaze heavy. "You are tense," he murmured, his voice smooth but laced with something that made her stomach twist. She forced a smile. "It has been a long day. Maybe I should go." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Sophia, we just started talking. Do not be so eager to leave." His hand moved slowly, settling just above her knee. She stiffened. "I have seen the way you look at me in the office," he said, his fingers lightly brushing against the fabric of her dress. "I know when a woman is interested, even when she tries to hide it." Her heartbeat quickened. She tried to shift away, but he applied gentle pressure, keeping her in place. "Ethan, I think you are misunderstanding something," she said carefully. His smirk deepened. "Am I?" She reached for her purse, keeping her expression neutral. "I really should be going. I have an early morning." His grip tightened on her wrist before she could stand. "Stay." Her stomach dropped. She forced a calm expression. "Ethan, please let go." His fingers loosened slightly but did not release her. "Do not act like you did not know what this was." She swallowed hard. "I thought this was about work." "It is," he said, his voice lower now, his thumb grazing her skin. "Your future here depends on relationships, Sophia. And I want to have a very special one with you." A cold shiver ran down her spine. She tried again to pull away. "I am not comfortable with this," he sighed, finally letting go, but his expression darkened. "You are making a mistake." She rose to her feet, her legs unsteady. "I need to leave." Ethan leaned back, watching her closely. "You think walking away is that simple?" She took a step back. "I do not want to be here anymore." His smirk returned, but this time there was no charm in it. "You owe me, Sophia. Do not forget who gave you this opportunity." Her breath hitched. "I do not owe you anything." He exhaled slowly, tapping his fingers on the armrest. "I could make things very difficult for you." She clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay calm. "Are you threatening me?" He shrugged. "I am simply reminding you how things work in this industry. Women like you do not get to the top without a little help, and I have been very generous." Her stomach churned. "I earned everything I have through my own hard work." His chuckle was cold. "Is that what you tell yourself?" Her hands trembled as she reached for her purse again. "I am leaving." He stood abruptly, his presence suddenly towering over her. "Not until I say so." Her pulse pounded in her ears. She forced herself to hold his gaze, though her entire body screamed at her to run. "You cannot keep me here." He tilted his head. "Are you sure about that?" For a split second she froze, then she moved. Without thinking, she grabbed the nearest object, a heavy glass paperweight from the table, and took a step back, holding it in front of her like a shield. "Do not come any closer." Ethan's smirk faded. "Put that down, Sophia." Her grip tightened. "Let me go." Silence filled the room. Then, with a scoff, he lifted his hands in surrender. "Fine, have it your way." She did not wait for anything else. She turned sharply, rushing toward the door, fumbling with the lock as panic clawed at her chest. Behind her, she heard him chuckle. "This is not over, Sophia." She yanked the door open and stepped out into the cool night air, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The door slammed shut behind her. She ran to her car, locking the doors the moment she slid into the seat. Her hands shook as she started the engine, her mind racing. Ethan had crossed a line, and she would not let him get away with it. Sophia's hands trembled as she clutched the cold metal paperweight. Ethan's expression remained unreadable, but the intensity in his eyes sent a wave of nausea through her. Her heartbeat pounded so loudly that it drowned out the crackling of the fireplace. "Put that down," Ethan muttered, taking a step closer. Sophia tightened her grip. "Stay back." A smirk curled at the edges of his lips, though there was no humour in it. "You are overreacting." She backed toward the door, keeping the object raised between them. "Let me leave." Ethan exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "Sophia, let's be rational." She reached for the handle, but the lock was stiff under her shaking fingers. Ethan sighed. "You are making a mistake. Do you even realize how much I have done for you?" She swallowed the lump in her throat. "Let me go, Ethan." He took another step forward. Her stomach lurched as she realized he had no intention of letting her leave so easily. "I do not want to hurt you," he muttered, his voice lower now, almost dangerous. Sophia's breathing grew erratic. "Then do not." For a moment the room stood still. Then, before he could move, she swung the paperweight, striking his arm hard enough to make him stumble. He hissed in pain, giving her just enough time to twist the lock and yank the door open. Her heels scraped against the polished floor as she sprinted out into the night. The cold air hit her face, but she did not stop. She ran down the pathway, barely noticing the sound of Ethan's voice shouting behind her. "Come back here, Sophia!" She reached her car, fumbling for the keys as she flung the door open. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she slid into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. A loud bang echoed as Ethan's fist hit the passenger side window. She jumped, gasping as she turned the key in the ignition. "I am warning you, Sophia." Ethan's voice was muffled through the glass, but the threat was clear. "You will regret this." The engine roared to life. She reversed out of the driveway so fast that the tyres screeched against the pavement. Her pulse pounded as she sped down the dark street, glancing in the rearview mirror just in time to see Ethan standing in the glow of the porch lights, watching her disappear. Her vision blurred with tears as she gripped the wheel, struggling to breathe. How had she let this happen? The next morning, Sophia sat at her kitchen table staring blankly at the steaming cup of coffee in front of her. She had barely slept. Her mind replayed every moment from the night before, each second more unbearable than the last. Her phone sat beside her, the screen glowing with a new message. Ethan Carter. "You will ruin yourself if you do anything stupid. Think carefully before you make the wrong move." Her stomach twisted. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. Number, she would not let him scare her into silence. Her fingers flew across the screen. HR department. "I need to report something immediately. When can I come in?" The response came within minutes. HR representative. "Come to my office at 10 a.m. This is serious." "We will listen." Sophia's breath hitched. This was it. By the time she arrived at the office, her hands were clammy, her nerves threatening to consume her. The receptionist gave her a knowing look, her lips pressed into a thin line as she nodded toward the hallway. "The board has been made aware," the receptionist whispered. "You are not alone." Sophia nodded, forcing her shoulders back. Inside the HR office, 2 representatives sat waiting for her. She took a seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Tell us everything," one of them said gently. And she did. She told them about the invitation, the locked door, the way Ethan had cornered her, the things he had said. By the time she finished, their expressions were grave. "This is not the first complaint we have received about Mr. Carter," one of them admitted. Sophia's throat tightened. "Then why is he still here?" the older representative exhaled. "Fear, power, but that ends now." The news spread like wildfire. By noon, the board of directors had called an emergency meeting. By 2 p.m, Ethan Carter's name was splashed across emails, internal memos, and whispered conversations in the break room. By 3 p.m, more women came forward, employees who had endured the same advances, the same threats, the same suffocating silence. By 5 p.m, security escorted Ethan out of the building, his face pale, his eyes darting around as though searching for an escape. He found none. Sophia stood in front of the office window, watching as Ethan disappeared into the parking lot, his figure smaller than it had ever seemed before. Her phone buzzed. HR representative. "We have officially terminated his contract. He will never work here again." A breath of relief escaped her lips. A new message popped up. Former employee. "You did what I was too afraid to do. Thank you, Sophia." Her heart swelled. For the first time since that awful night, she felt in control. Ethan had tried to break her. Instead, she had destroyed him,